There is a single moment, just one quiet, almost invisible moment that reveals to a woman everything she needs to know about whether she genuinely trusts someone. And it has nothing to do with his words. It has nothing to do with his income, his status, or how entertaining or impressive he appears. It happens in silence, in a split second. And most men pass right through it without ever realizing it was there. In this breakdown, I'm going to show you exactly what that moment is, along with 5 precise areas of a woman's body that quietly reveal, without a single spoken word, whether real trust exists. Stay with this because the third point on this list will permanently change how you interpret every interaction you've ever had. Let's be honest for a moment. Modern life is obsessed with language. Did she reply quickly? Did she say she misses you? Did she send a heart emoji or something more playful? And I understand why. Words feel concrete. They feel safe. They're easy to screenshot and dissect later with friends at 2 a.m. But here's what decades of research have already shown, and most people still overlook. Verbal communication is one of the weakest indicators of genuine emotional truth. This was demonstrated clearly in a well-known study led by Dr. Matthew Hertenstein at DePaul University. Participants were separated by a barrier so they couldn't see or speak to each other. One person simply reached through and touched the other's arm for just 1 to 3 seconds. Nothing more, no context, no conversation. And yet, participants were able to correctly identify emotions like affection, gratitude, fear, compassion, and even disgust with accuracy rates reaching up to 78% purely through touch alone. 78% from a brief touch through a curtain. Now compare that to studies on lie detection through speech, which sit around 54% accuracy, barely above chance. In other words, words often mislead. Touch tends to reveal. But this becomes even more interesting when you realize touch isn't just emotional expression. It's also a form of permission. For women especially, the areas they allow someone to touch are never random. They are not casual decisions. They form an unconscious map of trust. Neuroscience supports this in a way that's difficult to ignore. The body contains a specialized system known as C-tactile afferent nerves, designed specifically to process gentle, affectionate touch. These nerves don't respond to formal gestures like handshakes. They respond to slow, intentional, safe contact. When activated, they trigger oxytocin release, the bonding hormone, and reduce cortisol, the stress hormone. In the presence of a trusted person, touch literally creates a neurological state of safety. But here's the critical contrast. When that same type of touch comes from someone who isn't trusted, the body reacts in the opposite way. Muscles tighten, the nervous system activates defense responses. Discomfort appears instantly and involuntarily. That's why placement matters so much. Not in a social etiquette sense, but in a biological one. So today, we're breaking down 5 areas of the body that women naturally guard. Places they don't easily allow access to. And what it actually means psychologically, neurologically, and emotionally when they do. And to be clear, this isn't about manipulation. It isn't a strategy guide. It's an insight into how human trust is silently communicated through behavior most people never learn to read. Understanding this doesn't make you manipulative. It makes you aware, more observant, more emotionally precise, and ultimately more capable of building real connection instead of guessing your way through it. Let's begin. This first one surprised me when I first studied it. And it tends to surprise most people as well. The back of the neck is among the most neurologically sensitive regions in the human body. It's packed with nerve endings and sits just below the brainstem, one of the most primitive and survival-driven parts of the nervous system. From an evolutionary standpoint, this area is deeply tied to vulnerability. In the animal world, predators instinctively target the back of the neck. It represents a critical exposure point. Because of that, humans carry an ancient protective response here. Even before conscious thought kicks in, the body resists unwanted contact in this region. So when a woman slightly lowers her shoulders, relaxes her posture, and doesn't recoil when someone is near the back of her neck, something important is happening. Her nervous system has stopped labeling that person as a threat. That's not a small shift. For a system that has been tuned for survival for thousands of years, that response is significant. Evolutionary psychologist Dr. Robin Dunbar has discussed how human touch functions as a form of bonding and social alignment, almost like modern grooming behavior. Within that framework, the neck region sits at the top of the trust hierarchy. There's also a deeper neurological layer. Research published in Neuron has shown that women exhibit stronger activation in reward-related brain areas in response to gentle neck stimulation compared to men. Meaning, this isn't just safe, it's emotionally meaningful at a biological level. So when this area is allowed, it often reflects something unspoken, a deep sense of ease and safety in someone's presence. Now let's move to something that seems far more ordinary at first glance: hair. At a surface level, it might not seem significant. Hair is touched all the time by stylists, doctors, or in casual environments. But your brain distinguishes between functional touch and intimate touch in milliseconds. Roughly 150 milliseconds, in fact. The scalp is neurologically dense. Around 100,000 hair follicles are each connected to nerve endings. Gentle interaction with this area, running fingers through hair, resting a hand on the head, activates pathways associated with comfort and early caregiving responses. It's deeply tied to safety memories formed in infancy. At the same time, hair carries identity. For many women, it is closely linked to self-image and personal expression. It's not just physical, it's psychological. That's why casual access to someone's hair is rare unless strong comfort already exists. It's not about vanity, it's about boundaries. Research from the University of California, Berkeley has identified head and hair touch as one of the most emotionally loaded forms of physical contact between adults. It ranks extremely high in comfort when trust exists, but equally high in discomfort when it doesn't. That contrast is the key. When a woman allows relaxed, unguarded interaction with her hair, it signals something simple but powerful. Her comfort with you has moved beyond surface-level interaction. Most people never reach that stage without realizing how rare it is. Now we come to the one I mentioned earlier, the one that changes how you interpret everything. The waist area, especially the lower back and sides, is one of the most psychologically complex zones in human interaction. It sits at a strange intersection, close enough to intimate territory to trigger caution, but also naturally involved in guiding movement, like walking together or dancing. Because of that, the body's response here is extremely revealing. If contact is unwanted or not fully trusted, subtle defensive reactions appear automatically. The oblique muscles tighten. The torso angles slightly away. The hips shift outward almost imperceptibly. These reactions are not conscious choices. They are automatic outputs from the nervous system. But when trust is present, the opposite occurs. The muscles remain relaxed, the posture stays open. In some cases, the body subtly leans in instead of away. This is where things become especially interesting. The hips may orient toward the person instead of turning off axis. Again, not a decision, an instinctive alignment. Evolutionarily, this region is tied to core protection. It houses balance, center of gravity, and physical stability. Allowing relaxed contact here reflects a lack of perceived threat. Dr. Helen Fisher, a biological anthropologist at Rutgers University known for her extensive work on romantic attachment, has noted that early stage bonding often shows itself through increasing comfort in close proximity, body zones like the waist, not because it is consciously chosen, but because the nervous system stops resisting closeness. And that relaxation is one of the clearest biological markers of developing trust. Next is something often underestimated: the face. The face is not just another body part, it is identity itself. It is how humans recognize each other, read emotions, and express internal states. Because of that, it is heavily protected both socially and neurologically. Studies from UCLA have shown that facial touch from strangers consistently ranks as one of the most uncomfortable physical interactions humans report. At the same time, facial touch from trusted individuals ranks among the most emotionally meaningful experiences. Same action, completely different emotional interpretation. The difference is trust. There's also an observable behavioral pattern. In close, trusted relationships, women often initiate small facial touches without consciously thinking about it. Brushing something away, adjusting hair near the forehead, or lightly touching the jaw during conversation. These micro actions function as subconscious safety confirmations. But receiving facial touch is even more significant. Wiping a tear, brushing hair from the eyes, or gentle contact near the cheek creates a level of emotional exposure that only occurs when deep safety is present. Attachment research further supports this. Securely attached individuals show higher comfort levels with facial touch compared to anxious or avoidant patterns. In other words, comfort around the face often reflects the overall stability of emotional trust. Finally, we arrive at the last point: the inner wrist. At first glance, hand contact feels ordinary. People shake hands constantly. Friends walk together holding hands casually. But the inner wrist changes the meaning entirely. This area is highly vascular, with the radial artery close to the surface. It is one of the most sensitive pulse points on the body. Historically, exposing the wrist has symbolized openness and vulnerability. Even today, the brain still interprets it that way on a subconscious level. There's also a directional element that matters. Holding hands doesn't automatically expose the inner wrist. But when the hand relaxes and the wrist naturally opens upward, something subtle changes. It signals release of defensive tension. Research from the University of Virginia has shown that holding hands with a trusted partner reduces activity in brain regions associated with threat detection during stress. With strangers, that calming effect disappears. So the inner wrist becomes more than a physical detail. It becomes a directional signal of emotional surrender and comfort. Across all 5 areas, one pattern repeats itself. Trust is not spoken. It is revealed through relaxation: the back of the neck, the hair, the waist, the face, the inner wrist. None of these are random. They are zones where the body either tightens or softens depending on how safe it feels. And that is the real language most people never learn to read. Trust is not announced. It is demonstrated quietly in posture, intention, and subtle permission. A body that relaxes around you is saying something words often never will. And that's where everything becomes real. But there's something even more important you need to understand. Because everything we just covered only applies after trust begins forming. Before that stage, there is an earlier layer most people completely miss. Before a woman ever allows closeness to any of these areas, she is already communicating through smaller, earlier signals. Signals that determine whether trust will ever develop at all. And there's a separate breakdown that explains exactly how to read those early indicators. It's already available on this channel.